I found the old 8mm camera buried deep in the back of Murphy's thrift store, beneath a stack of moldy magazines. The tag read $20. A reel of film was tucked inside with a piece of tape across it. "Do not watch," it said. As an amateur filmmaker, I couldn't resist the temptation of this forbidden film. The old man at the counter barely looked up when I bought it. Back at my apartment, I set up my small darkroom. I'd been developing film since high school, so the process was routine. Load the reel, mix the chemicals, and wait for the magic to happen. When it was ready, I projected the film onto my bedroom wall. At first, it was innocent footage. A Halloween night from the early 90s, judging by the quality and the costumes. A father was filming his two children, dressed as a vampire and a witch, about 8 and 10 years old. The mother was handing out candy to trick-or-treaters. But after the last child left, something changed. The children vanished from the frame, while the mother closed the door and locked it with 3 different deadbolts. "Are we ready?" the father eagerly asked. "Yes," the children exclaimed in unison. "I got the rope just like you taught me, Dad," the boy exclaimed excitedly. As the camera followed them into the basement, the image became more grainy. I could still make out a workbench, tools hanging on the wall, and in one corner, a woman. She was tied to a chair, gagged. Her eyes were wide with terror and her cheeks wet with tears. "Now, remember what we rehearsed," the father said, still filming. The camera shook slightly, as if he was excited. "Mom's going to hold Aunt Sarah down while you each take your turn, okay?" "Take your turn," I was horrified. I wanted to turn it off, but I was frozen. The mother walked into the frame, smiling as if she were about to serve dinner. She placed her hands on the woman's shoulders, while the children approached with an indistinct object. The woman's muffled screams intensified, as the footage became more and more chaotic. The camera shook violently. I still glimpsed open wounds, blood, and heard the woman choking on pure terror. Then the roar of a chainsaw cut through the air, and everything went black. I sat there frozen in my dark apartment, heart pounding, staring at the empty wall. I had just watched a genuine snuff film. This family had tortured, maybe even killed this woman, and they had filmed it as if it were nothing. I was still trying to process what I had seen when I got a call from an unknown number. "Is this Leo?" Oh, yeah. "Hi, it's Murphy from the thrift store. Listen, that camera you bought wasn't supposed to be sold. The owner came back for it. He said his father's things got mixed up by accident." My blood ran cold. "What did you tell him?" "I had to give him your address and number. He's on his way to pick it up from your place." The line went dead. I stared at my phone, panic rising in my chest. Before I could even blink, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a middle-aged, average-height man with thinning hair nervously tapping his foot. He was the kind of man you pass without noticing, but when he looked up at the door, I nearly groaned. They were the same eyes as in the film. Older now, but with the same cold intensity one had seen in the footage. It was him, the little boy from those images. "Leo," he called through the door. "I can hear you. I'm David Hutchinson. I believe you have something that belongs to my family." My hands were shaking as I backed away from the door. I don't know what you're talking about. My dad's old 8mm camera, from the thrift store. I already threw it away," I lied. There was a long silence, and the film, my heart stopped. He let out a low chuckle. "You watched it, didn't you?" Then laughter erupted, accompanied by an unmistakable metallic scraping against the door. He was picking the lock. "What do you want?" I asked, already dialing 911 with my trembling fingers. "The film, obviously, and to make you understand the importance of keeping family secrets." The lock gave way. David walked in, closing the door behind him. The call had gone through. I could hear the operator's voice, but I couldn't explain my emergency. My wide eyes were fixed on the sharp knife in his hand. "You know, Dad's been dying for months," he said, scanning my apartment. But when I told him someone had our family films, he perked up. The police won't find anything. We learned a long time ago how to clean up properly and leave before they arrive. He took a step toward me. I scrambled for the fire escape, but David was quicker than he looked. He grabbed my shoulder, spinning me around. The knife flew toward my face. I ducked, throwing all my weight into his abdomen. We both crashed onto my coffee table. David's head hit the corner with a sickening crunch, and for a moment, he was dazed. I didn't wait to see if I had killed him. I grabbed the reel and ran for the door, taking the stairs 3 at a time. The police arrived 20 minutes later, having traced my number. They found David unconscious in his own pool of blood. The knife was still in his hand. He woke up 2 days later but never spoke, just smiling when questioned. The film was enough evidence to reopen several unsolved cases from the 90s. He succumbed to his injury in custody a few months later. I didn't follow his case or the fate of that woman because I had enough trauma already. I don't film anything anymore. I can't even look at a camera without seeing the terrified eyes of that woman. When I saw that mirror at Henderson's Thrift, that antique with a brass frame and intricate details, all for €15, I didn't hesitate for a second. Don't forget, dear, no returns, the owner warned me with a strained smile. I nodded and immediately called Lucy to help me transport it. It took us all afternoon to hang it properly, but once done, it completely transformed my dingy student room. The glass was so clean it made my room's poor lighting look like a movie set. That night, I went to bed proud of my find, only to be jolted awake by an icy cold that made me shake like a dead leaf. The room wasn't just freezing, but also strangely silent, as if someone had sucked out all sounds except for a faint scratching noise that seemed to come from afar. I strained my ears to listen closer. It sounded like someone dragging their nails against glass. I should have stayed in bed, pulled the covers over my head, and waited for it to pass, but this wild, irresistible urge was consuming me. I had to check the mirror. I slid out of bed and started walking. The scratching grew louder with each step, but when I was about a meter away, it stopped dead. I leaned in to see my reflection staring back at me. Even in my dazed state, I felt something was wrong. Instead of the shadow of my eyes, what was staring back looked dark, sunken, and empty. The nose was twisted, and the skin was paper pale. It took me a second to realize it wasn't my eyes, my nose, or my face. I was staring straight ahead, and she was there, inches away, wearing a ripped nightgown. Blood stained the fabric while her hair hung in greasy strands, framing that carved smile that was far too wide for her face. She tilted her head and smiled at me. I screamed and stumbled back, closing my eyes so tight I saw stars. My heart hammered against my ribs as I waited for something, anything, to happen. Minutes passed. When I opened my eyes again, I was alone. I quickly grabbed my phone light and scanned it across the room, trembling, but there was only me and the shadows dancing in the faint LED glow. It's the stress getting to you, I whispered to myself. Suddenly, my doorknob started rattling. It wasn't a gentle knock. The shaking was violent, as if someone was trying to tear it off its hinges. The noise echoed in my room like gunshots. Who's there? I screamed. No one answered. Lucy, I crawled to the peephole, grabbing my softball bat on the way. The hallway was empty, just those fluorescent lights that never worked quite right. The noise stopped as soon as I looked. I sighed and backed away from the door. But before I could process it, my closet started moving. Everything was shaking as if an earthquake was trapped inside. The hangers clattered together in a way that hurt my teeth. I yanked it open, ready to strike with the bat, but there were only my clothes and other trinkets. Get a grip, Jenna, I muttered, getting back into bed, pulling my covers up. I convinced myself it was my brain making it up. Just my imagination. Probably too much caffeine and stress. I had barely closed my eyes when the knocking sounded directly beneath my mattress. My blood ran cold. I lay there, frozen, listening to my heart thunder in my ears. Part of me knew I shouldn't look. Every horror movie ever made had taught me at least that much. But I couldn't lie there anymore. I rolled to the edge and looked underneath. She was crouched under my bed, staring up at me with that impossible smile. Her face was gray, almost corpse-like, and her eyes were black holes that seemed to absorb the light. "Jenna, come join me," she giggled, reaching out her hand. My eyes fixed on her hands. Her fingers were severed at the knuckles. They were just bloody stumps with the bone poking out. Black blood was dripping onto my floor, forming puddles that seemed to swallow all the light. "Come with me, we'll make them pay," she hissed, reaching her mutilated stumps toward my face. I scrambled out of that room like my tail was on fire and hammered on Lucy's door until she opened it. "Jenna, what happened?" "The mirror." "There's something in the mirror?" I gasped, pushing her inside and locking the door. Lucy listened as I recounted what I had seen. She wanted to check my room, but I wouldn't let her go back in, not until morning. I spent the night on her sofa, barely sleeping. As the sun rose, Lucy announced, "We're going back to that thrift store." The owner at Henderson's looked like he had aged 10 years overnight. When Lucy slammed my receipt on the counter demanding he take the mirror back, he turned white as a sheet. "I told you, no returns," he whispered. "Bullshit," Lucy snapped. "You know something you didn't tell my friend?" Lucy had to threaten to call the police before he finally cracked. "I bought it at a police auction," he muttered, glancing around the empty store. "It belonged to a woman named Rebecca. She was murdered. Her body was found in front of that mirror." My stomach churned. Murdered? How? Her husband was high. He needed cash for his next fix. When she refused, he attacked her with a kitchen knife, chased her around the house, and stabbed her multiple times. He paused, staring at my hands. She tried to grab the blade, got one finger sliced clean off, but he cornered her in the bedroom eventually. Lucy grabbed my arm, but I barely felt it. We walked out of that store, but I never went back to my student room. I had my things packed and threw that mirror away while I waited in the lobby like a coward. It's been months, and I'm still trying to move on. I should have trusted my instincts as soon as I walked in. But at 25, broke, I was hoping to find something decent for my friend's exhibition, and the thrift store seemed like my last chance. The place hadn't changed since the 80s. The neon lights hummed above, bathing everything in a sickly yellow glow that made my skin look pale as a corpse. The store was almost empty, except for the cashier, a few lingering customers, and this shady guy. Mid-40s, greasy hair hanging in strands over his face, and clothes he looked like he'd been wearing for weeks. He was standing in the middle of the women's lingerie aisle. But he didn't seem to be shopping. I tried to ignore him as I passed, focusing on the vintage dresses, but the weird vibe persisted. Every time I looked up, he was closer. He wasn't walking directly towards me but rather seemed to drift. When I moved towards the blazer section, I caught him hiding behind a coat rack. My hands started shaking as I pretended to examine a jacket, using the reflection in a nearby mirror to keep an eye on him. He was crouched down, partially hidden, but I could see his eyes intently following my every move. I could have bolted without looking back, but I convinced myself I was being too paranoid and walked towards the back of the store where the shoes were. That's when I saw the phone. He was holding it at waist level, and the camera was pointed at me. I snapped and walked straight up to him. "What do you think you're doing?" He looked up at me with his moist blue eyes and shrugged. "Oh, just looking around." "Nice view, don't you think?" The childish side of his voice gave me the creeps. "Are you recording me?" "I saw your phone." "I don't know what you're talking about." But he was grinning from ear to ear as if savoring the attention. His teeth were yellowed, and something dark was stuck between his front teeth. Fortunately, the commotion caught the attention of the cashier, who appeared already suspicious of this strange guy. "Problem here?" Pointing an accusing finger, I hissed. "He's following me everywhere and filming me." The guy looked at her with disgust. "Get out before I call the police." Suddenly, the guy's face completely changed. He had the audacity to look hurt, as if we were being unfair to him. His childish expression totally vanished, and I could see pure rage dancing in his eyes. He started backing towards the door. But his gaze remained fixed on mine. Before crossing the exit, he said loudly, "I just wanted to see who you are, really. Stop pretending, you see? Security. I'm leaving, okay? I'm going out." He left furious, mumbling between his teeth. I stayed in the store for a moment, hoping the matter was settled. When I walked out, the sun was low, casting long shadows between the few cars still in the parking lot. You can't hide forever. I'll find you. Always. He was there, still wearing that awful smile. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped my keys. He looked ready to charge at me. But without wasting another second, I dove into my car. I slammed the door and frantically pressed the lock button until my thumb went numb. The guy put his face up to the window. His breath fogged the glass, and I could see every detail of his features up close. The broken blood vessels on his nose, the thin scar from his left ear to his jaw, and his pupils reduced to black dots terrified me. Pretty car for a very pretty girl. Get out. I didn't move. He looked furious. He straightened up and walked around the front of the car. I watched in horror as he grabbed my windshield wipers and ripped them off, tossing them aside like mere twigs. The sound of metal grating against metal paralyzed me. He kept demanding I get out while vandalizing my car. He smashed the headlights, dragged his keys across my hood in long, deliberate streaks. He was humming an unfamiliar tune as he did it, sounding like a lullaby played backward. I fumbled for my phone to call for help, but my hands were shaking too much. The screen kept slipping between my fingers. He picked up a rock from the edge of the parking lot and raised it so I could see it clearly. He tapped it lightly before hurling it at my windshield. Cracks started in one corner and spread like a spider web, distorting everything beyond the glass. But it was his laugh that truly broke me. Not furious or frustrated, just delighted, like a child who has just created the perfect paper airplane. He spat a large wad onto my window, which slowly slid down the glass, and then he ran off. Not fast or panicked, just jogging as if he were late for dinner. I stayed in that parking lot for minutes, sobbing and shaking, before I could gather enough strength to drive home. The police took my statement, but with no witnesses or security cameras, there wasn't much they could do. They would keep an eye out and file a report. That was weeks ago. I haven't been back to that neighborhood since, but I know he's still out there. I know because sometimes, when I walk to my car after work, I hear that humming. And sometimes, when I check my rearview mirror, I swear I see a silhouette hiding behind the cars.